What is up, guys? My name is Caleb. Welcome back to another episode of the OTK podcast. This is the show where we discuss anything and everything that is shaping the world today. It is another installment of our views from the other side, just the conversation I like to have with people that have a different perspective or different view on things. I'm here with the one and only FEDEL, not to be confused with FEDEL. Yeah. It is my life's mission to get people to say your name right.
I appreciate that.
But we're going to be talking today a little bit about race in America and kind of that discussion that needs to be had. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
I'm excited because I want to talk about something that I've never heard in this conversation, never talked about before, and that's the conversation of racism versus culturalism.
Yeah.
Because I think, and I'll give you a little bit of my background, and then I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts. But I grew up a couple of miles away from a town called Whiteland. No joke, Whiteland.
Oh, wow.
It kind of matches its name. The KKK at some point had become so infiltrated in the local government, the National Guard had to be called in to pull them out because they had become too popular.
Yeah.
All right. So if there was ever a place that you would expect racism to still exist, it would have been in the area in which I lived. And one thing that I noticed was there was always an interesting paradigm because we were close enough to Indianapolis and Gary. That
it's real out there.
The kids that were, because we were in the suburbs, but we weren't far from those places.
Yeah.
And so the moms that were wanting to get their kids out of the gang life would bring them to the closest suburb, which was my neighborhood. And so we would get people in our school that were very, very different culturally than me. And so as I watched these kind of things clash, what I felt like, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, the moments that I think somebody on the left or a more liberal person or a more social justice oriented person would say were racist moments seemed a lot more to me like culturalists moments. Like I never in my entire life, I've never heard a white person say, I don't like them because the color of their skin or because they're black. It's always been they're a thug or a criminal or their music or the way they talk or the
loud
way,
music.
Which I know a lot of people would say, well, that's just a cover up for saying. But my thing is, if I'm in a room full of white people, there's no reason for them to use, code words. Like if they're going to be, at least my assumption would be, if they're going to be racist, they're going to say, I don't like black people versus I don't like ghetto people. That's what I hear 99% of the time if that conversation is being had. It's I don't like ghetto. So what would you say to somebody that would counter the argument? Because I assume you believe racism in America is still a prevalent issue.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I assumed. So what would you say to somebody that, my position would be that true racism is maybe 0.01% of what we actually deal with versus culturalism, where white culture does not appreciate some aspects of black culture.
I think it's the term culturalism and racism, which I understand what you're saying. To me it's justifying ignorance.
Okay.
Because this is what happens, right? Is like black ignorance is white ignorance. So, for example, if you're having a barbecue, right, your family,
right? If
your uncle gets drunk, punches his uncle, they go out in the street and they fight,
right?
It's just, hey, they're acting up,
right?
If that happens in the black community, they're thugs,
right? Okay, fair.
So what happens is it's viewed different. Like if I get angry, my anger is viewed differently than your anger. That's something that your parents or whoever around those suburban communities, that's usually what I call, I got a phrase too. You say, I say racial ignorance. That's what I call it. A lot of times I don't just say racism. Right. I do say racial ignorance. Racial ignorance is at an all-time high. And a lot of times racism, saying racist is the easiest way culturally to pinpoint it. And nobody wants to be seen as a racist unless you're a real racist. Unless you're a racist. So what often happens, because let me say, I was that kid. I've been that kid. So I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. When in 6th grade, I moved back to Memphis because I moved around. My parents split. I moved to Broken Arrow, Oklahoma as a senior in high school. The graduating classes there are average 1,000 kids.
That's a lot of kids.
Demographic is probably 80% white, maybe 90%. I know when I checked this year, the amount of African Americans at that school were like under 4%, right? So you go there and it's a cultural shock.
Right, I'm sure.
Right? This is the difference. Oftentimes, as a black person, you learn how to be around white people, but white people don't learn how to be around black people. So what happens is there's no common ground. So it's like, what happens, like, if the black guy, most of the times, if you're a group of white people and you have black friends in that group, they know how to be around you.
Right.
Like, they know what they can and can't do. Mm. And so what happens is, like, if you're the white guy, bro, like, I promise you, there are times when I'm with white groups of people and they drink, and I'm like, bro, I don't drink. I personally don't drink. But even if I did drink, I wouldn't drink, because my mistake in that could literally make me put me in a spot where I'll never get out of.
No, that's fair. Well, let me before you get too far from the analogy.
Yeah.
So again, why I think it's cultural versus racism. So you gave the example of the uncles fighting in the street.
Yeah.
What would happen in a not to make it this basic, but in a white neighborhood? 7 people would call the cops.
Yeah.
I mean, there would be no, like, it's going to go out on the street, somebody's going to get shot or stabbed. Nothing. I mean, all the soccer moms with their short, what's going on? And there'll be 20 people calling the cops. And you can tell me if I'm wrong. From what I gather from the culture, right? I watch a lot of, that sounds so bad, a lot of urban places even sell shirts that are like Warner Brother, right? They have the Warner Brother logo, and it says, when the cops come, Warner Brother or whatever.
Okay.
And it's kind of snitches get stitches, the kind of like, it is culturally unacceptable for you to call the police. Now, I understand that there is a thought process that the police aren't fair to that community, and that's how that idea comes up. But if I am in let's say I've moved to an urban neighborhood and I see a fight, my first thought process is, I'm going to call the cops. That probably wouldn't be the most popular thing to do in most inner city areas.
So let me hit on snitching first, because there's different definitions. I come from the snitching culture, right? Where snitching was, if I do something with my friend and we get caught, I cannot tell on him.
Okay.
That's the basic snitching rule, right? It's like the normal healthy snitching, which I'm not for this now, but I'm saying this is growing up. If you're a paying citizen, you're snitch. You're not in the game.
Right.
But if I sell drugs, or we're doing this or whatever, and we get caught, we both take a L. We both get caught. We both do this. We both get suspended if we're at school. That was basic snitching. What a lot of the things that you're saying is why diversity is so important. Like, on the regular, if you spend time with black people weekly, you would realize that the stereotypes, which often come to white communities first about black, are wrong. Okay. I'm talking about the bad ones, right? There are some, like, if you say, well, if you have a stereotype like, well, black people don't work, bro, that is right. That's like, bro, that's not true. It's like, well, a lot of them on welfare. Hey, bro, that don't mean black people
One doesn't
don't
mean
work.
The other, right?
So what often happens is the stereotypes rule. And this is why. I lived in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, in the Tulsa area for like the last over 15 years. I just moved to Dallas, Texas. In my neighborhood, there are no in that area. There are no black. There's not black leadership. And when I say black leadership, black people don't own anything. Right. So for example, let's say that you live in a predominantly white community, but there are 2 soul food restaurants owned by black people. There's a bank with a black CEO. There is a mortgage company ran by black people. Right. And let's say, in order to move around, you have to interact with those black people. Or let's say there's Hispanic. You go around enough Hispanic people where you end up, you standing there.
Your behavior changes.
Well, you're around them and you understand how they function. Right? So very obvious, if you're around a bunch of Hispanic people, they're going to speak Spanish. Yeah. So sooner or later, it's a lot easier if you just say, if you start learning some Spanish. Doesn't mean you lessen, but you're in that culture and you start learning the culture. Right. When there's no diversity and we're in our own silos. Right. You're not sitting there with me while we're watching a football game. Dak Prescott throws a touchdown, throws a touchdown. I jump around, or he throws an interception. I get angry, throw my hat. You're not in there to feel black anger when it's not threatening.
Right.
So what happens when you see it, it's threatening, or it's on the billboard saying, this guy's on the loose, he committed homicide. Or you go to the news, and it's like, well, this murder happened, and this. And so you're getting more images of a negative African American.
Right.
And so what happens is, if you're black, you're like, bro, look, I understand that stereotype. I understand how real that is, but it's just not true.
Yeah.
If you have a stereotype, there's going to come a time when you have a stereotype of people and it doesn't weigh the same, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a stereotype of, like, when I moved to the white community, blonde jokes, I didn't get it. I was like, it was blonde jokes. If you're blonde out there, I empathize. It was like I would be in groups and they'd be like, you want to hear a blonde joke? And I'm like,
why?
I never got it. It was cultural and I never understood it.
Yeah.
Never. I would listen. It never was funny. I don't hear them anymore, but I would hear blonde joke. It was like something funny. Or I would hear the term redneck. I was like, bro, what is a redneck? I don't know what that is. But it was cultural within the white community. One more thing, hunting. Hunting was massive when I was in Oklahoma within the white community. Bass Pro, massive. My daughter played soccer. It was freezing out for one game. 5 of the fathers on her team in the overalls.
Oh, overalls.
Right? Now, mind you, if they come in the overall, which is really quality, it keeps you warm. It's really smart to wear. But bro, they wore this camo to the soccer game. Nobody is threatened by the fact that if they have this camo gear, it means they own a gun.
Right.
Right? When you're black, bro, I can't even wear hoop shorts outside. Like if I wear hoop shorts outside, you know what I mean? Like, bro, in my neighborhood in Tulsa, and I can laugh about it now, it hurt for years. Bro, I could not go to the park without families leaving with my kids. It was like, it didn't matter what I wore. Because in that particular community, their images were all coming from TV. I know it because I was there long enough, and I was in a space where I would be literally the black guy, and then 5 minutes later I'd be on the pulpit speaking or performing. So there were times when I saw the switch in people, and it was really tough because it was like, you wouldn't come talk to me, you wouldn't. And so those conversations, so what happens is, I know, hey, my kid's going to have to deal with this in this community. I know this. And so you end up with all this, but you're wearing this weight. And a lot of times, Caucasian America, they think, well, if you just acted right, you're like, bruh, if I can wear hunting gear, bruh, like give me.
This is all it took.
Yes, yeah. It's like, it's those type of things. And that's why it's I always say, and when it comes to racial issues, like when you're culturalism, black people comes to the predominantly white school, right? Now, depending on where they came from, their parents are on the come up.
Right.
It's similar where I learned when I would meet people who I would meet white people who lived in trailers, right? That I came into the white community, that was a thing. I'd never heard the term white trash. And I was like, what is white trash?
Yeah.
Right? And so what would happen is that I would realize that oftentimes white people who lived in trailers understood black people
better,
who were poor, because they understood, they came from this place of struggle where it was not a priority for me to teach my kid how to eat at a table. I'm just trying to make it. I got a drug habit that I'm trying to beat. I got this, I got that. And so a lot of times those kids come out and they feel like outcasts, but this is the difference. If that kid from the trailer puts on a suit, watches YouTubes, learn how to act and walk, and the black guy watches the same YouTube videos, learns how to act and talk, when they both go to the job, when they both go to the game, the weight on both of them is different. He no longer is a kid from that community that was alienated by the suburbs. The black guy still has to fight through that, and he will. That's what creates the tension now. Right. It's like, you're right when you say, man, the culture is different. They come in here and they don't know the culture. They don't.
Right.
Like it's like they don't know the culture, and it's not because they didn't want to.
Right.
It's because their parents are coming from a culture of black church where they shout. We shout in Mississippi. We shout. In the white community, if you're in a Pentecostal church, they'll run. Yeah. But they don't shout.
Right.
So if you go to a black church and you see this woman break out shouting, you're going to be like,
what in the world?
What in the world? But I grew up with it. So I'm like, oh, she going to shout. If he hit this key on, she going to shout. But I go to the white community, I know they're going to sing 3 Hillsong songs. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
I know that we're going to put our hands up. You know what I mean?
Not too high.
Exactly. And I know the pastor can come up there and he can talk about hunting. He can talk about history of our country. He can do all that and never mention Martin Luther King. And I'm sit there and I'm like, bro, like it's Martin Luther King weekend. Can we get a shout out?
Right.
Like it's that thing where you like, as a black person, you understand that there's violence. You know, especially me, I've been there. I understand when I go to communities. I was just in Oak Cliff in Dallas this weekend. I was in the hood. I understand what those environments are like, and that it's real, and that there's crime there, and that I can't get caught lacking.
Okay, so let me ask you this question, and this is the kind of thing that people don't ever say out loud. Yeah. So this may get deleted from the thing.
Okay, say it.
What? Because here's my thing is I lived in that suburb area, and then I moved to Indianapolis where I did ministry, and we had a house in a rougher like area. Yeah. To me, when I talk about culturalism, because you talked about, well, if a white person does it, it's perceived this way, or another person. Yeah. To me, a lot of it plays into how the community responds to behavior. So I'll give you a really good example. In the suburbs, if you were at a Pizza Hut and they got your order wrong and you started cussing somebody out, a white guy would have walked, not to you, but to anybody that was cussing, the biggest white guy in the room would have walked up to you and said, hey, there's kids here. Shut up, right? Yeah. And that would have been it would be like, whatever, man. And then you're taking the food and left, right? I would go to Pizza Huts in these urban areas, somebody get on them, and they'd be throwing stuff, they'd be punching the bulletproof glass, and obviously that's the behavior of the individual. But what interested me was everybody's eyes were down, or they had their phone out recording. Yeah. No one said anything. No one tried to stop it. Nobody tried to intervene in the situation. Yeah. So I think when a lot of people see those interactions, they walk away saying, okay, the urban community, whether it's Hispanic or black, they're okay with the behavior because that wouldn't happen in a white. If you started yelling, somebody's pulling out the phone ready to call the cops, or somebody's standing up like ready to stop this. Yeah. In the urban community, at least in my experiences, everyone's like, I'm minding my own business. I'm not getting involved in this. You can go as crazy as you want until you pull out a gun or something. Yeah, and then I call the police. So so you got it's experiences, right? So what happens is that if your experience, when you saw that experience in a poor community, I'm going to say poor because I'm saying when we say urban or we say those are where people are stressed and feel less than, right? Those are not the only type of black communities, right? And they're not all like that. You see, look, let me just be clear. I come from a black family in Mississippi. Like that's where my grandma was. She just passed away earlier this year. We know people in the KKK were at the police department and all that. I have 6 aunties, 6 uncles. 5 aunties, 6 uncles within that side of the family. I grew up around like in black community my whole life. When that stuff like that happens, but I've seen that stuff happen in white communities. Now this is the thing. I've seen that stuff happens because I get the opportunity to be in so many different white communities. Right. You have more exposure. Exactly. So my exposure is I've seen like stuff where I was like, bro, like, is he just gonna get away with that? Like I've just seen white people get away with things. Like just like I'm talking about like being at school, watching somebody do something where you're like, bruh, he's just gonna get the walk because his dad knows somebody. Oh, for sure. So what happens is it looks different. I have been there and seen Mama Jenkins go off on the girl, but I've also been there and seen Mr. John snap on the auto guy because his car's been there for 3 days and they keep getting it wrong. Right. I've seen both, but I'll say this, culturally, when poor people or people who are disenfranchised do those things, it always feels worse because this isn't, I can move away from racism and just say like financially, bro, when you get out of a certain space, and this is everybody, bruh, you have to work not to look down on people who have not made it out their situation. Right. Conscious effort, yeah. Yes, because look, let me say, this is black, white, Asian, whoever. When you move to the suburbs, right,
you want your neighborhood to stay nice so your value don't go down.
Oh, for sure.
If anything comes in, and this is every race, you're like, bruh, that might hurt my value. Like, this is just when you make money.
Right.
Black people haven't, like culturally, haven't been making like tons and tons of money, as far as a lot, for as long as white people. This is how I like to say it, and this is hard. I remember I've gotten into arguments with people about this. Oftentimes, white people want to feel like we're running the same race. And I say we are, but white people started first. So what happens is we run the same speed, but y'all done passed a lot more trees than us. You know what I mean? So like certain trees we haven't made it past.
Right.
So like, for example, when I first got some money, I kept it in my mattress. I didn't trust the bank.
Right.
Right? IRA, stuff like that. It's not saying no black people knew about that years ago. Right. I'm saying that a lot of black people didn't know about it.
Well, I have no problem admitting that the African American community, for a variety of reasons, is at a distinct disadvantage. My perspective would be that I just don't think it's racism. I don't think there are white people that say because you are black. They might say because you're poor, because you don't act the way I like, because your culture isn't mine. Because you brought up a good point about income. Because like that when people talk about, cops are mowing down black kids in the street and no one cares.
Yeah.
Those stories never happen in Malibu. There's black people in Malibu. They never happen in Connecticut, and there's black people in Connecticut. So to me, if we're going to make the argument that like cops are racist, well then if you're going to make that broad a statement, which a lot of people do, especially the Black Lives Matter group, they'll say, cops more or less everywhere are racist. Then to me, it speaks to culturalism, not racism, because you should see the identical percentage of black people getting shot in middle, suburban neighborhoods by cops that you do in the middle of the ghetto. But you don't. You see virtually none. I mean, although the numbers are small, I think last year the number of black people shot by cops was like less than 300. Yeah. But you should think that it would be even on all socioeconomic categories. Yeah. But it's almost 99.9999 in the same square blocks of Chicago, LA. It's not even spread across the country. Yeah. So what would you say to somebody that says cops, banks, all of these people are not responding to race? Now, and I agree, you guys are at a disadvantage. Like I have no problem in the fact that a good story to me. And again, the points to the culturalism. My brother-in-law is African American, and he said that when he told his friends that he was going to go to college, they asked him why he was trying to act white. Mm-hmm. At any point that a culture says education is something that they see as exclusive to another race, that culture is never going to succeed at the same rate as anybody else.
So one thing you have to be careful, like when you see ignorance, you always have to know it's 5%. It's 5% of every group. Okay. So it's like I would challenge any white person, when you see ignorance of a different race, black people stand out more than any other group of people.
Right. So you're going to notice when somebody does something stupid.
You notice, bro. It's one of the reasons why, like, you got to think like the same thing that. So let me make sure I want to make sure I go back to your point of what you were saying about like the getting shot in Dallas, and forgive me for not knowing the man's name and the cop's name, but in Dallas recently, a cop who was coming home from a long shift shot a black man.
I saw this story. Yeah.
Okay, in his apartment. Now
I think they should be tried for murder. Okay, for the record, that you shot a guy, you should get the death penalty. I'm with you.
Exactly. Okay, so. Now, for whatever reason, like that happened, when you're a black person, this is what you think, right? You're like, think of all the times this happened and it did not make the news. Like we have this baggage that as a black person, oftentimes when you're white, you want us to act like things never happened. No, let's start today. Right. No, let's start. And it's like, bruh, like, have you heard about Black Wall Street? Like, it's hard to just act like, for me to act like that. First of all cops are not bad. I'm very clear. I know that gets out there because there's kind of like this thing that we're trying to get some accountability, but we all know our publics are, whether it's firemen, we know, again, it's normally the 5% rule. Right. It's like there are some bad apples.
Oh, there are bad cops,
but the reality is, I think in general, even the people you might think are assumed, they know, because somebody breaking their house, they calling the police, right? But my point is that oftentimes, as a black person, I'm supposed to forget about my baggage, and it's really hard because I've lived in communities and I've seen how deep it goes. This is like when when you see the footage of black people getting shot, that's not the first time the people who are screaming are saying it happened. We're saying, oh, we got some proof. Maybe they'll believe us now.
Let me ask you this on that, because we only have about 15 more minutes.
Okay.
What and this is where I think, not to represent all the white people, obviously.
Yeah, that's fine.
But the disconnect for me is to hear, when you look at the number of gang deaths in urban areas where gang members are killing innocent people, gang members are killing. To me, I struggle with when people are like, well, what about our struggle? What about racism? What about whatever? All I can think is, your number one cause of death, if you're a young African American,
is black people.
Is not just black, but gang related death. So to me, it's like, for anybody, it's kind of being, to me, the analogy I would use is, you're in the room with a kitten or a adult cat and a tiger. Is it possible that cat claws your eyes out and you die? Sure, it's statistically possible. But to me, to focus on racism in America when there's a tiger, which is a lack of emphasis on education and gang-related violence. Those things to me are a tiger in the room to black people in comparison to virtually anything else. So why do you think is it a wanting to blame not your community, being able to pick somebody else, say, oh, well, you're the reason we're not succeeding, versus, because there are riots when a cop kills a black kid. I've never, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I've never seen a riot make the news that was a riot against Crips. Bloods, and 100 more people for every 1 people that are shot by cops will be killed by gang members, and they seem to, and again, I could be wrong, there seems to be a much higher toleration for gang activity in urban neighborhoods than a corrupt cop.
So a couple of things. One is, black people are very aware about gang violence. But the reality is that when black people care about black stuff, nobody outside cares.
Okay.
So it's like, if I care about my community, my black community, where there's no mayors that came out of it, no governors that came out of it, it doesn't matter. I can do everything. Let me be very clear. One of the main things that would cure crime in black communities is opportunity.
Okay.
This is what's happened. And I am not justifying gang violence, murder, the things that's going on in Chicago. I just understand Chicago. Even though when those murders, I see those different, even though I know they're wrong, and it's tough to watch mothers losing their sons and babies but I understand. So
your thought is, there isn't jobs, therefore people turn to crime.
But it's not like, if we just put 100 jobs in there, it would go away. It's like, man, it's been years.
Right.
So what happens is that, bro, I don't know if you've ever had a job and felt like there were no opportunity. You get frustrated.
And you look for other outside income sources, like selling drugs.
Frustrated, poor, bro. When you get to that place, you get overwhelmed. Let me just say this. Mental illness did not become a thing until white kids started shooting up schools.
Right.
It became like, why are these white kids? Bro, I've never heard I've been in white churches a lot, right? I've never heard a white pastor get up and say, what's wrong with our white kids? They're shooting up schools, right? In black communities, that happens all the time. You have the pastor going out to the neighborhoods, how can we stop this killing? And you're trying to put Band-Aids on stuff that needs, like, you're trying to stop wounds that need doctors. And so you're trying to console people who fathers feel ashamed because they couldn't get a job to care enough, and now they leave, which I'm not justifying. But there's these issues that when you go to the white community, when I found out about meth and how bad meth was, I could be in a suburb and there would be meth going on in the neighborhood, but the structure of the neighborhood would keep a meth head looking normal because they know how things work. In the black community, in America, you need money to live comfortable, period. You need stability. Bruh, drugs and stability last longer than drugs and instability. Black people often have issues with instability and no opportunity. They're looking at the news and they're watching things that are totally feel against them. And they're looking and saying, so what am I going to do? And I'm all for believing bigger than yourself. I'm here for believing bigger than myself. I understand having goals and dreams, but I also understand what it's like to be in a place where you give up. Some people commit suicide, some people join gangs. Like, I kid you not, I've seen. So a lot of times when you're dealing with this issue of race, you're trying to say, bro, like, man, like, I know you don't get it, but I have this weight that I'm trying to shake. But every time I walk out of my door, I'm reminded, and I didn't do anything to deserve that. So when you do talk about crime, just know We care. I guarantee you, the more politicians, the more business owners that come out of the community, when those things happen and the media cares, because now the governor cares even more because he's from that community.
Right.
And the councilman in the Supreme Court, they're like, hey, we're going to get some boots down to make sure it is. Then it changes, and it's not just black people walking through the neighborhood saying, we will overcome.
Right.
Now it's like, hey, we will get some resources in to help. And over the years, it's not overnight, over the years, as mental illness and therapists come in and help these kids work through the trauma, because now Chicago, they got years of trauma, right? Yeah. Just like these white kids who are growing up in homes that you would deem stable like suicide is rampant in the suburbs.
Yeah.
And you're like, bro, how you commit suicide? You live in this community. Right. Your parents got this. You got this. They will give you this. Why are you committing suicide? Because even in the midst of comfort, you can feel forgotten.
Yeah.
And you're seeing people who don't have that feel forgotten in the results. And so hopefully, as our country have this conversation, the awareness will come, and then as awareness comes and understanding, it doesn't mean that it won't be rough. The conversations won't be rough, but it does mean that now when you see something and you're from white America, you just won't automatically think, oh, it's because he's lazy. You know what I mean? Yeah. You'll think, man, maybe having some hard times. I hope he get out of them. Right. Or you'll think that next time somebody comes in and want a job and they might not have dressed as well, you'll think, well, maybe this. And that awareness makes everything better from everybody, from white people being educated about blacks, to Hispanics being educated about Asians, to Asians being communicated about Puerto Ricans. And then culturally, we're more sensitive to the fact that our neighbor is playing loud music because it's a holiday in their country, and today they're excited and they like to play that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I feel like we need more of that in our country.
No, that's good. And unfortunately, we are out of time, but I think this is just as a closing thought. I really wanted to kind of start, because I don't hear the conversation about culture versus racism, and I think any time that we if it is not racism and it's culturalism, I think it's important to label it properly, because I think people can find hope that cultures can understand each other, right? Cultures can blend together. Cultures can at least coexist. But if the narrative continues that one race will not accept you because of your color, then there's no hope, because your color's never going to change. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to stop being black. So if white America dislikes you because you're black, then it's like, well, I might as well be a criminal. I might as well do all these, because what's going to change? I'm always going to be black. Versus, if it's one of those a thing where if I can help them understand my culture, if I can help them understand why we do what we do, and then maybe they can at least settle down a little bit and not bring it up or.
And I would say to all the white people watching, if your term culturalism, don't think less of being white because you are learning somebody else's culture. Right. Because white people, and I'm going to be very specific, white people have to understand other people's culture and not think less of it.
Right.
They have to say, hey, this is the way they do things. They shout in church. It's not crazy. I'm sensitive enough. Right. Because, bro, the only way black people are thriving in America, I'm talking about from Jay-Z to Diddy, is because they know they understand white people better than white people understand black people.
Right.
And so that right there is help. Black people, working really hard to understand white people. We know that, but white people do not feel like they should have to cross the line to be like, bruh, let me do this. We come over so much, and then there's a wall. We like, bruh, I'm exhausted. I have this, I've done this, and it's not enough. You're moving the goalposts for me. It's like, bro, I understand that when I come to your house, you don't like me to be loud. Okay, that's cool, because I'm a dramatic person. Culturally, we can be dramatic. Not all black people, but we can be dramatic. I understand that. It's like, but you're in my house, I'm going to be loud. You need to be okay with me being loud.
Yeah, you're here, for sure.
So it's like there's some of that needs to happen too. And I feel like culturally, white people who are the most comfortable people, I don't mean there's no struggle, who are the most comfortable people in this country, have to be willing to get uncomfortable by learning other people, because it's uncomfortable when you're in a room full of people talking the language
you don't understand.
And you're like, I normally don't have to do this.
Right.
And so now it's like, oh, People would go back to their. You start, you know what I mean. You start feeling like, well, they shouldn't have to do this. Because white people were look. Let's be clear. I am in a like my home. My wife is white. My kids are mixed. So culturally, I'm around.
You see both sides. Yeah.
Oh, I do, and so I understand how uncomfortable it is for another group of people to come around and to just sit there and just take it in. Black people, you have learned how to understand. White people, even in slavery, it was the help.
Right.
The help learn how to understand another culture. So I feel like that'll help the conversation.
No, thanks so much for sitting down with me, and I think conversations like this need to happen because people are so afraid to just throw out an idea and process through it. Why don't you let everybody know where they can find all your social media, your music, all the things that you do?
I go by FEDEL, FEDEL Music. Make sure to join me. Stream all my music. I'm on Spotify. I just released Brave 3. I got a song on there called Social Media that kind of ties into this. So enjoy, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Am I your first? I might be his first black. Am I the first black?
Yeah.
I'm the first black interview. You know what I mean? Breaking barriers.
That's
here.
right. Changing it up.
But I appreciate you asking hard questions.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. The conversation has to continue. So
no, it's so good. If you guys want to support everything we're trying to do, it is a patreon.com/OTK Media. Till next time, we love you. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.